Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to continue our 5 Ways series that I started last week with an article titled 5 Ways Your Health is Under Attack and What to Do About It. And we're going to continue that today with a look at your privacy, 5 ways your privacy is under attack and how to protect yourself. So stay tuned for that. That's what we're going to be covering. First off, I want to remind you guys to bookmark my website, theconsciousresistance.com, this beautiful website put together by Neil Rademacher, our webmaster. We've been posting content here for a decade. I've got documentaries, I've got books, I've got podcasts, hundreds of podcast interviews at this point on all kinds of topics. You can scroll down here and see documentaries, investigations, books, learn more about agorism. You can see my presentations, see my past research on the pyramid of power, surveillance, anarchism, the occult, weather modification, walk-in talks, Utah ritual abuse, 5G, the Finder's Cult, COVID-19. I've got some motivational talks. There's so much content here, guys, and I've been putting it together for over a decade plus. I think it's one of the best collections of quality research out there, so I encourage you to dive in. Now, I want to remind you again, since I write for The Last American Vagabond, thelastamericanvagabond.com, you can go here to my author page and you can always see the latest articles I have. As I mentioned, we covered this one just last week, 5 ways your health is under attack, and today we're going to focus on this article, 5 ways your privacy is under attack and how to protect it. And to do that, first off, let's go ahead and watch this short clip. I'm going to play you guys this clip of former FBI advisor. His name is Tim Clemente, and this is taking place in 2013, as I outline here in my article. This interview with Tim Clemente, he's a former FBI counterterrorism agent. It happened just over a decade ago on CNN, May 2nd, 2013. And this was all going on during the Boston bombing situation. And so they were talking about how they're going to get communications between the alleged bombers. And Clemente made some statements on CNN, particularly on the Aaron Burnett Out Front program, where he said that, this is what his specific quote was: "There's a way to look at digital communications. I can't go into detail of what's done or how that's done or what's done, but I can tell you that no digital communication is secure." This was reported on all over the mainstream media at the time. The Guardian, Huffington Post, ACLU, Glenn Greenwald talked about it. And you can still find the transcript on the CNN website today. So let's go ahead and just watch that clip.
Let's turn our attention now to the phone call between Catherine Russell and her husband Tamerlan Tsarnaev. You said something very interesting on Aaron Burnett's show last night. You said that if Catherine Russell does not divulge the contents of this phone call, that the FBI had other methods finding out what was said. What did you mean by that?
Well, on the national security side of the house, in the federal government, we have assets. There's lots of assets at our disposal throughout the intelligence community, and also not just domestically but overseas. Those assets allow us to gain information and intelligence on things that we can't use ordinarily in a criminal investigation, but are used for major terrorism investigations or counterintelligence investigations.
And you're not talking about a voicemail, right? What are you talking about exactly?
I'm talking about all digital communications there's a way to look at digital communications in the past. And I can't go into detail of how that's done or what's done, but I can tell you that no digital communication is secure. And so these communications will be found out. The conversation will be known. And it's just a question of whether or not Catherine Russell decides to own up to what was said prior to that information being known or after the fact. And it'll be unfortunate for her if she doesn't own up to it completely and fully, because the facts of this case, the facts of her involvement and communication with her husband, will be known.
And so what Tim Clemente said there took place, as I mentioned, May 2nd, 2013. This is just weeks before the Edward Snowden leaks became known to the public. And whatever your thoughts are about Edward Snowden and his trip to China and the NSA, the point is, Edward Snowden, you've also got other whistleblowers like Daniel Hale, William Binney, Russ Tice, and others who have made it perfectly clear to anybody who still doubts it. We are living in a surveillance state, and that's the United States, that's Western Europe, that's China, that's India, that's most of the quote-unquote developed democracies in our world that are surveillance states and have very little privacy to these days, and it is only going to get worse. And so this article, we're going to focus on those areas. Now, I want to make it clear that caveat that we started with just a moment ago with that video. You heard Tim Clemente said, no digital communication is secure. He said that 10 years ago. So just remember that in the back of your mind. If that's true, it could be true, it might be true, But that doesn't mean we should just acquiesce and just give up and say, okay, well, I have no privacy, so I'm not going to even bother trying. I think it means we need to be able to try, harder to, and because technology, we're in like a digital technological arms race. They create tools to crack encryption and crack passwords, and some guy out there is creating new layers of encryption. And of course, we got quantum computing that could be really concerning and dangerous in terms of privacy. But for the most part, we're in that digital arms race. Now, what I wrote here was, it is of absolute importance that those who care about liberty make an effort to protect their privacy whenever possible. Even if only in principle, we are better served by flexing our rights to privacy than quietly acquiescing to the invasive surveillance that has become so normalized in our world. And while it is absolutely becoming increasingly difficult to maintain privacy beyond your front door, and in some cases, people have willingly given up privacy in their own homes, the tips below will at the very least slow down any potential hackers, law enforcement, or government agents. Again, understanding the caveat that we might be screwed when it comes to digital means in general. Number one, your digital footprint. Now this is kind of I just use this term kind of broadly, talking about your IP address, internet protocol addresses, which for those who don't know, this is logged by advertisers' websites, the NSA, under programs like Prism. Prism also gathers messaging data that you send via Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and other tech companies. And there's another program called Upstream, which taps right into the backbone of the internet, the actual cables that connect and stream all the data that we use and that we send out to the internet. So you got a couple of programs like that that are already tracking your IP address, and the IP address is a way to track your geographical location. Now, if somebody can track your geographic location, then they can find out quite a bit about you, obviously where you're at. They can look further into that in the age of the internet and start learning about your habits and your routines and your lists you're signed up for, newsletters you receive, things like that. It's not that difficult. So if somebody tracks this down, they can find your city, your postal code, and then from there, if they're really good, they might be able to find your birth date, your social security number, and this would be more on the hacker side of things. And there are basically innumerable additional ways in which the public, we, the people, have voluntarily, not me, I don't use apps, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but people have voluntarily given up their privacy. Yes, in some ways, just by participating in certain platforms, whether using the app or using the website, more and more you're getting the websites asking you, do you want to reject all this or accept all of it? But sometimes you don't have an option. If you want to use a website, the website's like, hey, this is what we're going to track, and you got to accept it if you want to use our services. And it is what it is. We make compromises in those ways. So a lot of times, it's not even that they're coming in and holding a gun to our head and taking away our privacy. We have just become so comfortable in a world, especially those my age and younger, 38 and younger, who have become used to sharing, and the older generations, they might consider it oversharing about our lives. So what can you do about it? First of all, recognize that it is impossible to avoid all types of surveillance and privacy invasions on the internet. Most people accept a certain level of invasion of privacy, like I just said, agreeing to terms of services, downloading apps without reading them. But there are some things you can do immediately. One of them would be stop using apps. And while they offer a level of convenience, I know it's easy, just instead of typing facebook.com or instagram.com or tiktok.com or whatever, people would rather just click a button and then it opens up and the whole world's there. And then also sometimes the apps, they don't really offer the same services. Like you might not have the same features if you're logging on a tablet or a computer or laptop that you do via the phone. So that's kind of another way that they want to incentivize you, socially engineer you to using the apps. But downloading apps is the number one way to compromise your computer, tablet, or phone. And instead, as I said, just log in and you'll be subject to a lot less privacy attacks in general. Just that simple step. It's not going to get rid of everything, but you are definitely giving them way more access to your device, to your pictures, to your microphone, to your image, just all kinds of things that people just don't pay attention to. And they can use that to gather, to sell data on you, to make money off you, to sell you ads. Like there's a number of reasons that don't all involve like the government coming to kill you, that are just about your privacy, and you own that data and they're making money off you. So why not try to protect it? Another step, of course, would be to use a virtual private network, a VPN, which allows you to obfuscate your IP address and location. And this means that instead of looking like you're in Houston, Texas, you show up in Nigeria or Greece or Mexico or wherever else you want to be. There are a lot of different VPNs out there. This is not an ad, by the way. I mean, maybe I need to reach out to Molvad, but the one I use and the one I support is Molvad VPN. That's linked in this article if you read the article, because they are decentralized, I would say fairly decentralized, and their philosophy seems to be aligned with privacy and securing that. Because you don't even have to use an email or a phone number to get their services. So you don't have to link your card to it, your name, your number, etc. You can pay anonymously with crypto if you want, like Monero. And there are also other technologists who are launching what they're calling DVPNs, decentralized VPNs. There's the Sentinel VPN, the Solar VPN, which are said to offer more protection and more security because their nodes and their networks are distributed and decentralized. So lots of cool stuff out there if you want to dive into it. Those are just a couple of basic tips for those who haven't become familiar with VPNs. Let's move on to number 2, social media. We just discussed the apps and how people are giving up privacy by using apps, and part of that, of course, social media. But social media is really the most obvious path that governments, law enforcement, and stalkers, let's be real, choose when it comes to gathering data on a target. This is because, again, we are voluntarily handing over our data in the form of likes, selfies, which are useful for facial recognition databases, and the daily documenting of our lives. And I do it too. I enjoy sharing like my travels and journeys and, having people comment and all that stuff. It's like a fun interaction. I get it. But I also understand that I've given up a lot of information about where I go, what I like, what I wear on a daily basis, just all kinds of little things that if somebody's trying to study you, or if they want to connect an AI and feed data to it and say, hey, tell me everything I need to know about this person and their habits, we're making it pretty easy. And in addition to sharing our own details, social media is also the home of hackers and scammers who steal identities, finances, and or can cause psychological harm. I've got people impersonating me on Telegram and elsewhere trying to scam some of my followers by claiming, hey, how are you doing? Are you ready for they'll say things like this that usually give it away. How are you doing today, Patriot? And most of my audience is like, yeah, that doesn't sound like Derrick. But nonetheless, those people are out there. So you got not only just the social media kind of invasiveness and the privacy, giving away all your information through likes and selfies and that data, but then hackers, people trying to steal your identity, your finances. And of course, if you got children, there's a whole nother layer of concern there, not even just privacy based, but absolutely you need to teach your children, in my view, how to use the internet and how to take it seriously and take their privacy seriously. And finally, when it comes to social media, although it's not explicitly a privacy concern, 5th generation warfare, which is a term I'm going to be writing more and more about, and I know that you guys have heard me talk about it. I did an interview a few months back with Ryan Christian of Last American Vagabond and Whitney Webb. We talked about this. You can find it on my website. But 5th generation warfare, which is basically just the next generation of warfare. So not just guns and bullets on the battlefield, but as we've seen it going, it's hackers. That's been a part of it for a while, like hackers and drones and things for the last couple decades here, the last decade at least. But we're moving even more beyond that, where the internet and social media itself is the battlefield. I think psyops like QAnon are part of 5th generation warfare, as well as using the internet to use planted or fake stories, as well as compliant journals and fake journalists and fact checkers, and surveillance, which puts all of us in basically this mental and physical matrix, right? So 5th generation warfare isn't just the internet spying on you. It's the internet is a war on your mind. I mean, here's Alex Jones being right. It's an info war. So what can we do about it? Well, the most easy option, but not the most popular choice, is to opt out of as much of this stuff as possible. You could avoid using social media altogether. There's nothing in our human handbook that says we are required to live lives on social media. It's quite popular with, again, my generation and older and younger, all of the humans in general. But we don't have to. We could avoid social media. We could limit our use of websites, which require private information to sign up. However, this is going to be an extreme option for most people. So if you want to use social media and you want to do it in a way that respects your privacy, my suggestion would be to do it outside of big tech. And what does that mean? Despite the near monopoly status of Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, X, Instagram, etc., there are many, many alternative social media sites, as you guys know. Some of you are probably watching this video on some of these quote-unquote alternative media sites. Everything from Odyssey and Rockfin to BitChute, although BitChute is my least favorite platform because there's so many Nazis on and racists, like real actual racists and Nazis on there. I just block them all. I don't really care. But Odyssey, Rockfin, BitChute, Hive. Hive is a blockchain-based platform. You got PeerTube, and I listed a few, Minds, Mastodon. So all these sites are out there. Now, of course, if your goal is to reach the masses, then you kind of limit yourself because the masses are on the big tech platforms. I get it. This is a battle I've had within myself for a decade. So now, or for at least for the last 7 years. So I'm still on Facebook, unfortunately. I've gone back and forth. I've deleted accounts and come back, but that is where the vast majority of my traffic's going. But that's a whole nother conversation. Each of these alternative social media platforms have different functionalities. Some of them are made just for video. Some of them are made for sharing posts and video, audio, etc. But whatever it is, you can share your thoughts to friends and family and content to them without sacrificing your privacy. And then when it comes to messaging and keeping in touch with people in general, the most common apps used around the world are Meta's Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp, which are owned. They also, include Instagram in there. Messenger is Facebook and Instagram. If you want, though, an alternative way to communicate with friends and family that doesn't require to give up your whole history, especially, using these new threads and all this stuff that they're launching, which they're basically just tracking every message. And if you've never done this, by the way, there's something called Google Takeout. You can actually go, if you've got a Google account, you can go download your entire Google file and then delete your account and stop using them. And then download your entire Facebook file and everything that they have. And I'm telling you, you will be creeped out to see they're going to have images and things you forgot you sent. They're going to have messages, every single message you ever sent. Yes, including the dirty ones will be in there. And even sometimes when I did my file, I got images that weren't mine from friends that somehow it pulled from their accounts and gave to me. None of them were anything, that they were probably embarrassed about, but nonetheless, it is pretty disturbing when you get your Google Takeout folder and download your whole Facebook file. But you could use other alternatives like Session, Status, or XMPP, and I linked in this article to all three of those where you can learn more about them. Of course, Telegram is a popular messaging app, and it offers one-on-one encryption chats, just one-on-one, but not as a group or outside of that, and that's only on phone too. So somebody like me, it's not an option. It's not a complete privacy solution. But if you insist on using big tech platforms, and as I said, I'm one of them because I try to reach people, refer back to my first section on Digital Trail. Stop using apps. It's that simple. When you download the big tech apps or the app for your local gym, for example, as Miriam and I found out, you are often giving away permission to access your device, your camera, microphones, pictures, and sometimes even messages, as I mentioned. And, Miriam uses the above phone, which I'll talk about in just a moment, where that's our next topic, the phones. And it's a privacy-based phone. And we have apps in there that you can basically scan any new app you're considering downloading, and it'll tell you all the trackers and here's the hidden things and whatnot. And so our gym is, because everything's going digital, they're just oh, you don't even have to talk to a person. Just come up and scan your phone, the QR code, and you're in, right? I'm okay, let me think about that. I don't really like doing that kind of stuff. And I looked it up, and Miriam and I saw, they want access to all kinds of stuff. So we refuse to do that. So we just walk in and wait for a human being and say, hey, can I check in with my phone number instead of the freaking QR code? And nobody gives us any shit or anything. It's easy. It's simple enough. You can make changes. You can actually change your behavior instead of just participating. So do yourself a favor and skip the apps. Go old school, go in the browser, type the address, and get to your social media and log in. This alone will greatly reduce the amount of data that you're sharing. Now let's move on to smartphones. The rest of this list is actually focused on the smart world, smartphones, smart cities, the smart grid. Let me see what else we got. Yeah, so we'll talk about all that because that's really where things are going. One level is okay, you got your phone, you got the internet, but what about the world around us that's quickly growing with facial recognition cameras and license plate readers and all kinds of fun stuff? Well, smartphones, like most technological advancements for the last few decades, including the internet itself, started out as tools for the military. These tools were designed by the U.S. Department of Defense under the direction of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And we already touched on the Snowden leaks, but you could also go back to the Church Committee hearings in the 70s, specifically 1975, when we found out that the NSA and other U.S. spy agencies were spying on Americans' phone calls. This widespread adoption, of course, the widespread adoption of cell phones, now personal phones, only accelerated government's data collection on us. And now that phones have gone from just being a phone to an all-in-one machine, which also just happens to make calls, they are really a treasure trove of personal data. And it's something we all need to be aware about. So Again, you can opt out. That's always going to be my first piece of advice when we say, well, what can we do? You can opt out. You don't have to have a cell phone if you don't want. Yes, I know it seems necessary for many of our lives, but I promise you it's not. It just takes a little bit of extra time and effort. I don't have a phone. My girlfriend, my partner, she has a phone, so obviously I use it. I get the benefit of it when we're together. But when she's not around, I use my computer. I look up directions for places I want to go. I pull out this old piece of technology called a pen and a pad, and I write things down, and then I go on a bike ride or whatever, and I take a bus, and I figure it out, and I get places, and sometimes I have to sit around and wait, or I have to ask questions. Imagine that, talking to human beings. And I get there, though. I make it. So it is possible. But if you're not ready for that extreme path, consider at least rethinking your relationship with the devices. Do you need to take your phone to the bathroom every single time? Or for me, my laptop, do I need to carry the laptop to the bathroom? Is it really necessary? It's like it's got this freaking pull on our brains, like I gotta be close to it. Zombie. All right, so do you need to take it on your walk with your dog or your kids? Do you have to have all the apps with notifications on, which constantly interrupt your own thoughts and your own, just daily life? And do you really need or even use all the apps on your phone or on your computer? These are just a few simple questions to get you started on reframing how you relate to digital technology, because we have to be careful to prevent this technology from controlling our habits and our actions, because in many ways, social media and the internet are already affecting our mental health and our sanity, depending on how much time we spend on these devices. I know that I easily spend 10 to 12 hours a day either staring at my computer doing stuff like this, or researching, talking to people, just doing nothing, whatever, and I mix it up. I go on bike rides, I get out of here, but still, I can feel that it has a pull on me, and that's something I want to be stronger than and smarter than. I want to be smarter than the so-called smart devices. Now, if you can't give up your cell phone addiction, consider at least purchasing a smartphone which actually respects your privacy. There are several companies that I'm sure you guys have come across over the last few years that are offering a variety of services. These include de-Googled phones, which have been built from the ground up. And there are other phones that have just, they got their own operating systems that you'll have to do your own research to decide whether they, deliver on what they promise. But the only company that I can personally vouch for and that I have vouched for is the Above phone, which is founded by Ramiro Romani, who is just a good friend of mine. He's involved in the Freedom Cell Network. He's co-producer of the Greater Reset as well. And Ramiro's company, here, let's open this up. You can see that Ryan Christian interviewed Ramiro back in, actually, it's been 2 years, when he was first launching back in 2021. And you can see here, abovephone.com, replace big tech with your private ecosystem. And then they recently are actually launching the Above book. So now they're actually doing pre-orders for laptops that have been, again, similarly stripped of all the spyware and loaded with a custom Linux system that has all the tools and things you need, and they've got customer service and stuff like that. So check them out. So there's stuff like that, and then again, as I mentioned, you got VPNs, you got other things so you don't have to necessarily use a Google phone or an Apple phone, right out of the box filled with all the spyware. You can de-Google it yourself, or you can work with a company like Ramiro's and Above Phone. You can check out some of these other companies that are popping up. You have options. We have more options than we've ever had in our lives. All right, moving on. Smart devices. Again, now we're getting bigger, broader picture. It's not just a smartphone. It's a smart device. And what does that mean? You got a smart fridge, smart washer, smart toaster, smart vacuum cleaner, smart shoes, smart kids' toys. That's the next layer. We're going to have to get into that soon. So many things. And it's not just those things. It's the appliances. It's the house. It's literally your entire smart house. That's what they're kind of calling it now, right? And you got the smart TVs. Well, we know when it comes to the smart TVs that they've been spying on homeowners since at least 2015. That's been documented. We also know that the CIA has the ability to spy on you through your smart TV under a program called Weeping Angel. And then you got the various virtual digital home assistants, Echo, Siri, etc., that are all listening to you all the time. Do you guys get that yet? They're listening to you all the time, not just when you say your keywords or trigger words or whatever. They're freaking listening to you all the time. And then I saw this really great report from privacy researcher Naomi Brockwell that I linked here, which is all about the ways that smart cars are listening and spying on drivers. In fact, I reported on this back in 2020 that companies at the CES 2020 conference, they showed their plans for making use of the surprising amounts of data which are gathered by the newer model vehicles, including Amazon, Intel, Qualcomm, and BlackBerry, were all part of these companies seeking partnerships with automakers and who are also searching for ways to monetize the data gathered by the vehicles. You think that OnStar system's not listening to you, that Tesla you're driving, you think it's not listening to you? Those companies are collecting that data. They're working with these big tech companies. They're going to sell that data somewhere so that your car can give you customized ads, so that your cool, fancy big windows in the Tesla or whatever can have an ad displayed to you based on conversations you've had recently. And it's going to be so hip and cool and convenient, people are going to freaking eat it all up probably. So here's another little point about the smart cars. There was an article I found that this guy was talking about how vehicle manufacturers are able to see and hear what you're doing based on that. And they said that anytime you plug a smartphone into a vehicle, the vehicle will likely copy personal data. This is with new phones, of course. He said, quote, among the trove of data points were unique identifiers for my phone and a detailed log of phone calls from the previous week. There was a long list of contacts, right down to people's addresses, emails, and even photos. The vehicle also collected an acceleration and braking style, beaming back reports to General Motors over an always-on internet connection. Coming next, face data used to personalize the vehicle and track driver attention so they can look at your face to make sure you're watching the road. Don't be looking away. So if you look down, they say, excuse me, sir, stop texting and drive, or something, that's helpful but creepy. And yeah, where are we going? Another smart device is these doorbell cameras. Ring is the most popular one, which is now owned by Amazon. I've reported on this and I linked it here that Amazon actually has their own facial recognition program called Recognition, spelled with a K. And they have been working with police departments to integrate recognition, the facial recognition program, with the Ring doorbell cameras that people are voluntarily putting up that not only see their front doorstep, but see the neighbor's house across the street. And through this, the people are voluntarily creating a neighborhood police state. They are eliminating their own privacy. So what can we do about it? Because this is where it gets more difficult. You can't stop your neighbor from getting a smart doorbell camera. You can't, stop the drones outside and all these other things that are beyond our control. So if you want a new vehicle, if you want it with all the new features and the must-have stuff, then I guess just know that you're doing so and that all those things are going to involve giving up a little bit of your privacy. But my biggest recommendation here is to opt out of these things. When it comes to the phone, okay, I get it. You think it's necessary. Maybe you still want to use social media or whatever, but don't put smart TVs and Echoes and Ring doorbell cameras and smart fridges and smart toasters and freaking smart vacuums. And don't put smart children's toys that are watching and tracking them because they're going to tell you it's going to give you all sorts of useful data. They're trying to get you to build your own digital prison and you're doing it. Personally, I don't believe we should be normalizing surveillance in our homes, especially for the younger generations. And I think the home should be the one place where children can feel free to express themselves without fear of strangers listening. And that's really what it's about for those who don't know. So if you're going to have those devices, at least have an honest conversation with your kids about privacy and the importance of it, and let them be aware of what might be listening to them or tracking them in their own home. Now, the final piece of this puzzle is smart cities. We started out by talking about your digital trail, your digital footprint, then social media, smartphones, smart devices, and now we hear smart cities and the smart grid in general. All of this is part of the 5G, 6G, and beyond smart grid. This is part of the tokenization and the just sort of commodification of all life, the digitization of all life. It's about putting sensors all over the place, cameras, streetlights, smart vehicles. They're going to tell us our clothes. They're going to tell us it's good for the environment. It's good for the planet. This is called the Internet of Nano Things, the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Humans, the Internet of Senses, many names. This is all connected to the central bank digital currencies, social credit scores, 5Gs, and as I've been showing recently, even things like digital billboards in Houston, and self-driving taxis are coming now. I mean, they're working hard to be turning Houston into a smart city, and this is happening all over. Clearly, the plans for smart cities are advancing, and these cities like Houston are going to become privacy nightmares. So what can we do about it? Well, for one, it's important to recognize that the Smart City Agenda is part of Agenda 2030, part of the Sustainable Development Goals outlined by the United Nations. And I think the key is to exit these cities whenever possible. However, I know that for many, many people, leaving the city is not a viable option. And in that case, that means you need to get active. I mean, you can just sit by and do nothing if you choose, but I think you'd be selling out the coming generations. Why not get active and actually try to stop this? And to do that, you need to stop the implementation of smart city technology at city council, town council, school board meetings, tower commissions, wireless commissions, county commissioner meetings, etc. This is where those things are taking place. Attend meetings, organize in your community, run for local office if you think it will help. Stop these policies before they even begin. Because if we do nothing but complain on the internet, which is what a lot of you are doing, or just give in to apathy and be blackpilled, we're so cool, nothing can, there's nothing we can do, we're only failing ourselves and we are failing future generations. We're setting them up for a world without privacy, without liberty. And I believe every free person of free heart, mind, enabled body, and even if you're not an enabled body, do what you can online, should be doing what they can to get out of these systems as soon as possible and to begin supporting building parallel systems. This is what I talk about in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. It's been translated to Spanish. It's been translated to French. The German copy is coming out soon. The Japanese copy will be out next year. There's an audiobook. Check it out, especially the updated version. This gives you all the tools you need to get started. I believe this is the most conducive way to save privacy and liberty for future generations so that we can remain free from these digital prisons. Now let's circle all the way back and remember where we started with Tim Clemente's words from 10 years ago. I can tell you that no digital communication is secure. So the last piece of advice, act as if that's true. And if you really need to communicate something that is illegal or that you really want private, do it in person. Get rid of all the cell phones and computers, put them in another room, get rid of all the smart devices, and make sure you're truly alone. That's the only way. If there's something you are worried that will get you in trouble, whether illegal or not, and you're really that worried about it, then do not send it through a digital means, through a privacy app, encryption app, with a VPN or anything, or deep web, etc. Just don't, because we can't guarantee that it is private or secure. All right, guys, in my mind, if we don't stand up for our privacy and security, we will have nothing. Privacy and liberty are directly connected. If we want liberty, which I want, individual and collective liberty for everybody, we have to be free to think, to have our own conversations, to have our own thoughts. We have to be free to organize. And if anything, 1984 and books like it and real world circumstances have taught us that you must have liberty if you're going to stay free. If we don't have, we must have privacy if we're going to have stay free, and if we're going to have liberty. If we don't have privacy, we're not free at all. And we are the only ones that can fight for it, can preserve it. We're living in a time now where most people, especially the younger generations, have already acquiesced and given up the idea of privacy. They don't even understand it or think that it's worth. I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. We've all heard these things. But if we want to keep it alive, we have to stand, we have to fight, we have to resist everywhere we can through non-compliance and by continuing to educate people. Otherwise, the coming generations will be born into these smart city prisons and there won't be another option for them. I refuse to give that to my nieces and my nephews and to any potential future unborn children that I might have. And I hope that you will continue to fight as well. Thank you guys for listening. I want to remind you, if you want to support me, the best way to do so is to buy my books. Go to theconsciousresistance.com. You can look at our shop, see books and t-shirts. Buy How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, the Conscious Resistance Trilogy, the Holistic Self-Assessment. That's the best way to support me, as well as if you want to support us by buying some Conscious Resistance shirts. We got lots of cool designs. We got some new designs coming up soon, including Ask Me Why I Don't Use Bluetooth. Stay tuned for that one. You can also sign up at buymeacoffee.com/Derrick Broze for monthly support or one-time support. And you can sign up at derrickbroze.substack to support me on a monthly or annually basis so I can continue to do this. And I greatly appreciate anybody who chooses to do so. Thank you guys for watching and for listening. Remember to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to find all of our latest content. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful,